다이어트 할 때 다른 사람들은 잘 빠지는데 나만 그대로인 것 같아 속상하신 적 있으신가요? 롭 울프 박사는 그 이유를 대사적 유연성 부족, 그리고 미토콘드리아의 손상에서 찾고 있습니다. 이 영상은 강연의 마지막 파트를 다루고 있습니다. 1, 2부를 안 보신 분들은 오른쪽 상단 영상을 먼저 시청해주세요. 앞에서는 왜 식단이 개인마다 다르게 작동하는지, 그리고 지방대사가 왜 중요한지 같은 큰 그림을 설명했죠. 이제 롭 울프 박사는 대사 건강을 회복하기 위한 해결책을 제시하면서 대사적 유연성이라는 개념을 구체적으로 설명합니다.
So is there a formula for success? Is there something that we can pull out of this that we can use? And I'm going to argue that there's not necessarily like a number. Optimum isn't a number. It's going to be two kind of matrix-driven processes. The first one is that under ideal circumstances, we should be able to transition seamlessly between a wide variety of fuel substrates. If you had a big whack of carbs, it wouldn't leave you drooling on yourself a couple hours later. If you had to go a day without eating, like I did because I had some food poisoning and I haven't eaten all day, and what I did eat from yesterday didn't stay with me all that long, and it would be largely unaffected because I've been in a ketogenic state for a long time. So it's not that big of a deal for me. So I would argue, though, that a seamless transition between fuel substrates is a laudable characteristic, and it's something that we should be pushing for all the time. We should always be pushing for a little bit more metabolic headroom, the ability to deal either with a little more carb or a little more fat, although there are situations in which that really tightly controlled macronutrient ratio will be valuable. The other point that I'd make is optimum is going to be a relative lack of modern degenerative disease, and I don't think there's really any huge drama around that. I will make the point that when we're talking about the lack of modern degenerative disease, it's really important that we pick our definitions of what normal or healthy is carefully. So this is an example of, but the top one is a United States population. The bottom is a pre-Westernized population, and they're basically being checked for oral glucose tolerance. And what's so interesting with this is that even though this non-Westernized population on the bottom, they do see a mild decrease in their ability to metabolize glucose with age. So they're losing a little bit of metabolic flexibility. At the end of their life, they're better than anybody was in the Westernized population early in life. So when we are trying to define what normal is, we need to be very careful. And that is a place that I think that the ancestral health model, evolutionary biology, can be really valuable. This is our normal 2-hour oral glucose tolerance test. And we don't really get all that concerned until it's up above like 140, 160, heading into 200. We're type 2 diabetic. By contrast, I got this information from Stefan Guyenet, a couple of blog posts he did pertaining to oral glucose tolerance tests in pre-Westernized cultures. And what's interesting is this is a 1-hour oral glucose tolerance test. The other one is 2-hour. This is what we use. The 1-hour oral glucose tolerance test, in general, pre-Westernized individuals barely go above 100. And that's in half the time. And I would make the case that the 2-hour oral glucose tolerance test and anything that we ascribe as being normal or in that pre-diabetic stage, the house is burning down. Like we have serious, serious problems.
우리가 흔히 말하는 정상 수치는 절대적인 기준이 아닙니다. 그건 어디까지나 역학 연구와 전문가의 의견, 그리고 정책적 목표를 통해 합의된 숫자일 뿐입니다. 영상에서 언급된 경구 포도당 부하 검사만 봐도 그렇습니다. 현대 의료 시스템은 2시간 기준을 사용하지만 전통사회의 연구 데이터는 1시간 기준을 씁니다. 이건 엄청나게 큰 차이죠. 그래서 우리가 정상이라고 믿는 수치가 사실은 이미 많이 나빠진 상태일 수도 있고요. 반대로 정상 범위를 조금 벗어났다고 해서 반드시 위험한 것도 아닙니다. 실제로 콜레스테롤 수치는 정상 범위의 기준이 조금씩 더 낮아져 왔습니다. 그 결과 예전 기준으로는 정상이었던 사람들이 이제는 위험군으로 분류되기도 합니다. 이런 변화는 물론 질병을 조기 예방할 수 있다는 장점이 있겠지만 너무 이른 약물 처방과 불필요한 공포심을 야기할 수 있습니다. 저도 혈액 검사를 하면 콜레스테롤이 정상 수치보다 항상 높게 나와서 병원에 재방문하라는 연락을 받곤 합니다. 그런데 제 혈당과 중성지방은 늘 낮게 나오고 체력과 컨디션도 더 좋아졌습니다. 물론 건강을 지나치게 확신하는 건 가장 어리석고 위험한 태도라는 걸 잘 알고 있습니다. 병원을 무조건 불신하는 것도 아니고요. 그럼에도 저는 현재 스스로의 건강에 대해 큰 걱정을 하고 있지는 않습니다. 이걸 한번 생각해 보세요. 여러 약물을 사용해서 모든 수치를 정상 범위로 만들었다고 해서 그걸 건강하다고 할 수 있을까요? 반대로 수치가 조금 벗어났다고 해서 곧바로 병이 왔다고 단정해서도 안 되겠죠. 결국 여기서도 중요한 건 하나의 숫자가 아니라 전체적인 맥락입니다.
Some of the work that we're doing with LabCorp is looking at the LDLP, LPIR score, and GlycA as it all relates to this early diagnostic around prediabetes. And it's interesting, many people with a elevated blood glucose 100 to 110 never progress to type 2 diabetes. They do have some other problems due to that elevated blood glucose level, but they never progress to type 2 diabetes. But there's a subset of people that will run around for a couple of years with blood glucose around 90 to 99, and then they rapidly progress to type 2 diabetes. There's interesting hows and whys around that. But this whole story of prediabetes is really it is so ignoring a problem that is really incredibly powerful. This stuff has kind of macro application. How many people are familiar with this work from the Weizmann Institute? They were put oral glucose, continuous glucose monitor on 800 people, track their responses to various foods. Again, this could be a big one to jump in and dig into. But the graph on your right-hand side, is that right for both you guys? Yeah. That is different individuals and their blood glucose response to bread, the same amount of bread. And look at that, the bottom one, they barely have a blood glucose response. You have some people that are up in that peri-diabetic range due to consuming this food. What we learned out of this study, and these are kind of cool, blood glucose response to bread or straight up glucose, and then bananas versus cookies. And some people, the cookie produced, it's like they drank water and then a banana made them diabetic. So this stuff is really kind of crazy and also important from the perspective of personalized nutrition. I know for all of us trying to convey a general recommendation that we can get the most people on board with, eat largely whole unprocessed foods. Okay, check, that's great. But even within that story, there is a massive variation both from person to person and how a single individual reacts to various foods left here. So the real world example of this is the 7-day carb test, which I featured in my second book. The 121 is my wife's blood glucose response to, I think this was white rice. 190 was mine. This was at 2 hours, which arguably may be too high for both of those, but clearly my wife's blood glucose response is dramatically better than mine, and she's like 40 pounds smaller than I am. So just from a dilution factor, you would expect her blood glucose to be a little bit higher. If she was the same weight as I am with the same metabolic health that she has, it would probably be even better than what we have here. Another real world example is the transition into ketosis, and how some people experience the low carb flu. I think that those people, like me, tend to be on that insulin resistant side, have been in that kind of glucocentric metabolic machinery for a long time, and it's really like a bug hitting a windshield. But again, interestingly, my wife, she doesn't notice transitioning into ketosis. She'll go low carb, she'll fast, she is completely unfazed by this whole process. And that's another interesting thing too, is the people that I find who do easily transition into ketosis, they don't have that magical, the angels are singing, my brain works super, super good. I think it works for the other folks like myself who maybe have some broken metabolic machinery, and it really is bypassing some of the logjam that a glucocentric metabolism.
그는 똑같이 키토식을 해도 사람마다 반응이 다른 이유에 대해 핵심적인 힌트를 제공합니다. 저도 로블프 박사의 아내처럼 처음부터 키토플루 증상도 거의 없었고 탄수화물을 절제하는 게 크게 어렵지 않았습니다. 반대로 많은 분들이 말하는 뇌가 맑아지는 느낌 같은 것도 크게 못 느꼈고요. 생각해보면 저는 운동을 좋아해서 늘 활동적이었고 식단 관리도 어느 정도 해왔었기 때문에 키토 식단을 시작하기 전에도 대사적 유연성이 좋은 상태였던 것 같아요. 결국 유전이든 후천적인 관리든 몸이 건강할수록 식단 변화에 대한 적응도 수월해지는 게 아닌가 싶습니다. 그리고 혈당 반응 테스트는 좀 충격적이지 않나요? 저는 음식에 대한 혈당 반응이 사람마다 어느 정도 차이가 있지만 추세는 비슷할 줄 알았거든요. 같은 음식을 먹어도 저렇게 정반대의 반응이 나타날 수 있다는 건 처음 알았네요. 그가 잠시 언급한 7일 탄수화물 반응 테스트는 연속 혈당 측정기를 달고 여러 음식에 대한 혈당 반응을 확인해서 자신에게 맞는 탄수화물 종류와 적정량을 찾는 방법입니다. 테스트 자체는 간단하지만 그 전에 꼭 필요한 준비 단계가 있습니다. 30일 리셋 프로그램이라고 하는데요. 이 단계에서는 정제 탄수화물과 당류, 가공식품을 완전히 배제하고 건강한 식단을 통해 몸을 안정적인 상태로 되돌려 놓는 겁니다. 이때의 식단은 거의 정석적인 키토식이라고 생각하시면 됩니다. 이 단계가 필요한 이유는 인슐린 저항성이 높은 상태에서는 어떤 음식이든 혈당이 튈 수 있기 때문입니다. 즉, 나의 진짜 혈당 반응을 보기 위해 먼저 바탕을 만들어주는 과정이죠. 그 다음 단계가 본격적인 탄수화물 반응 테스트입니다. 연속 혈당 측정기를 달고 하루에 한 종류씩 같은 조건에서 똑같은 양의 탄수화물을 먹고 혈당 반응을 기록합니다. 예를 들어 바나나와 쌀밥을 비교하고 싶다면 똑같은 양을 같은 시간에 공복 상태에서 전날 수면까지 가능한 동일하게 맞춰야 합니다. 그 다음 식전, 식후, 그리고 식후 2시간 혈당을 측정합니다. 음식 50g 기준으로 식후 2시간 혈당이 120 이하의 음식이 나에게 맞는 탄수화물이라고 합니다. 저도 조만간 직접 한번 해보고 결과 공유 드릴게요. 자신의 혈당 반응이 궁금하신 분들은 한번 테스트해 보시면 좋겠네요.
So why can't we transition seamlessly into a ketogenic state? This largely boils down to mitochondrial damage in various ways. And this is a super short treatment of the various inputs that can damage the mitochondria. I could have had dozens of these, but antibiotics are a potent disruptor of mitochondrial function. We forget sometimes that the same RNA and DNA that we go after with bacteria and antibiotics, mitochondria are endosymbiotic bacteria that we've been carrying around for a very, very long time. Mitochondrial dysfunction and obesity. The very state of obesity tends to be a high oxidative stress environment. We have a massive throughput of energetic substrates that overwhelm the mitochondria and cause oxidative stress. Iron overload, oxidative stress, insulin resistance, sleep dysfunction. So we look at, I think 40% of our population now, our work population, is in shift work, and it's crystal clear that shift work causes a host of metabolic disruptive processes, and really at root cause is mitochondrial dysfunction. The gut microbiome can negatively alter mitochondrial function. And this is a great paper. It's about neuroimmune and neuropsychiatric disorders, and it details the many roads towards mitochondrial dysfunction that lead ultimately to these conditions. So your metabolism ultimately is your mitochondria. And again, just making that point down in the bottom left-hand box, if your mitochondria are broken, the only thing left is glycolysis and effectively complexes 1, 3, and 4, which are high oxidative stress and carry all kinds of other problems. This is something that I would love, again, like a longer format to talk a long time about. Multi-generational epigenetic changes. What if my grandmother had gut dysbiotic issues that influenced my mother, and then my mother, who was type 2 diabetic and also autoimmune, what knock-on effects did that have? And all of these things seem to be heading towards mitochondrial dysfunction and an inability to really have a flexible metabolism.
우리의 대사를 망가뜨리는 원인이 정말 다양하죠. 영상에서 소개한 연구를 직접 살펴봤는데요. 미토콘드리아 손상 요인으로는 항생제 사용, 각종 약물, 과식, 영양 불균형, 수면 부족, 생체 리듬 붕괴, 그러니까 로불프 박사가 말한 교대 근무가 여기에 포함되겠죠. 좌식 생활, 운동 부족, 반대로 과도한 운동 후 충분한 휴식을 취하지 않아도 문제가 된다고 해요. 그리고 만성 스트레스, 흡연, 과음, 환경 독소, 정말 끝이 없네요. 그러니까 우리가 건강에 안 좋은 습관 정도로만 생각했던 것들이 사실은 미토콘드리아를 직접 손상시켜 대사에 문제를 일으키고 감량을 방해하는 요인이 될 수도 있다는 겁니다. 특히 저는 야간 근무가 눈에 들어와요. 저희 아버지가 환갑을 넘긴 나이에 화물 운전을 시작하시면서 낮과 밤이 완전히 뒤바뀐 생활을 하셨거든요. 그렇게 몇 년 일하시다가 건강 때문에 거의 반강제로 은퇴하셨고 지금은 몸이 많이 안 좋으세요. 저는 새벽 2시에 일어나서 일을 하기 시작한 그 몇 년이 아버지의 건강을 완전히 망쳐놨다는 생각이 들어요. 이 영상을 보시는 분들 중에도 야간 근무나 교대 근무를 어쩔 수 없이 하고 계신 분들도 있을 거라 생각하는데요. 그런 분들은 더더욱 각별하게 몸 잘 챙기시기 바랍니다.
Okay, so what the heck do we do with this stuff? It's all the things that we talk about all the time for restoring our general health. Circadian rhythm, sleep, light exposure, I think are massively underappreciated, but are really coming on strong. This is probably one of the most important things that I've done in the last year, which is by hook or by crook. If If I won't freeze some part of my body off, I go out in my backyard in Reno and sit in the sun for as long as I can in the mornings. I have some pictures of me being out there at 19 degrees, and even if it's like 30 seconds, it's made a huge impact on me. Gut health, meaningful relationships, lift weights, go fast, go slow. What that means is get a wide variety of physical activity. Novel experiences are great for the metabolic flexibility within the brain. Regarding food, I just really powerful argument to track your blood glucose response. Use that Wired to Eat 7-day carb test. And just as an aside, the last chapter of the book is on ketosis. The whole book is a funnel for getting people into ketosis. Not many people realize that, but they're like, hey man, I went through all this rigmarole and ultimately it looked like ketosis was a good fit. And I'm like, yes, it was. So, but you're an asshole if you tell people you can't eat carbs, but if their own metabolism says you can't eat carbs, then they're good. So eat with the seasons, get as much variety as possible. How many people know the story of Procrustes? Anybody? Procrustean bed? We've got a couple of them. So Procrustes was a kind of an outlaw in Greek mythology, and when he would encounter people on the road, he would offer for them to stay in his abode. And Greek mythology is really odd in some ways, but what he would do to people, if they were tall, he would stick them in a short bed and cut their legs off. If they were short, he would put them in a long bed and like put them to the rack. But basically a Procrustean process is where you bend and flex the truth to fit your desired outcome. And I think that all of us, myself included, have used this kind of Procrustean process to try to take just so stories and create this overarching kind of like, oh, high carbs best or low carbs best or whatever, versus making the bed work for us. And that's where a focus on outcomes is really where the rubber hits the road. But again, using this ancestral health perspective to have that kind of steeping in what normal is and what healthy is.
여러분 어떠셨나요? 사실 번역하고 해설을 하는 저도 어려웠지만 시청자분들에게 너무 난해한 이야기가 아닐까 하는 걱정이 들긴 했어요. 왜냐면 이 영상은 이렇게 먹으면 안 된다 같은 단순한 처방을 주는 내용이 아니니까요. 그런데 사실 공부해보면 과학이라는 게 그런 것 같아요. 딱 흑과 백으로 나뉘어져 있으면 간단하겠지만 조금만 깊이 들어가 보면 회색지대가 훨씬 더 많습니다. 우리가 그 회색지대를 무시한 채 이건 좋은 거, 저건 나쁜 거, 모든 걸 이런 단순한 기준으로만 판단하면 실생활에서는 더 많이 흔들릴 수밖에 없습니다. 뭐든 진짜 제대로 이해해야 현실에서 자신의 상황에 맞게 잘 적용할 수 있겠죠. 그래서 결국 맥락이라는 단어를 또 꺼낼 수밖에 없네요. 내 몸 상태, 주변 환경, 스트레스, 대사 상태, 모든 맥락이 맞춰져야 운동도 다이어트도 비로소 효과가 나타나니까요. 영상에서 많은 내용을 다뤘지만 제가 이 강연을 보면서 떠오르는 메시지가 딱 하나 있었어요. 건강을 무시하고 감량은 꿈도 꾸지 마라. 동의하시나요? 결국 건강하면 모든 게 다 좋아지고 변화도 쉬워져요. 그러니 여러분도 새로운 다이어트를 시도하거나 컨텐츠를 보실 때 이 기준으로 판단하시면 좋을 것 같아요. 이 방식이 과연 건강한 방식인가? 아니면 몸을 혹사시키고 건강을 망가뜨리는 방식인가? 모든 변화는 건강에서 시작됩니다. 건강을 회복하는 과정이 바로 대사적 유연성을 키우는 과정이고, 그러면 다이어트는 자연스럽게 따라온다는 사실 꼭 기억하시기 바랍니다. 이상한 다이어트였습니다.